You think you've got what it takes to succeed in commercial real estate? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my very special guest is Terry Painter. We're going to talk all about it right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast, and also on KCAA Radio right here in Southern California. Guys TV, Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Welcome to Guys Radio. This is your host, Robert Manni, welcoming you to the show where men and women can be at their best and everyone wins, Guys Radio. We're here to inform you, inspire you, empower you, get you to think and feel, and who knows, maybe even act by virtue of the journeys, stories, experiences, and insights from the guests I bring you each and every week to the show. We've got a great show for you today. Our very special guest is Terry Painter. He's written a book about commercial real estate. And you'd think that that might be a strange subject to be talking about these days because there's so many, malls that are struggling and there's so many commercial retail locations that are not doing well. And there's so much more work being done remotely. But there is always a strong market in commercial real estate if you know what to look for, how to buy, and how to manage your property. So Terry's a real pro. He's going to take us through that. And I thought it's a little bit of a different topic, and I wanted to get into it with Terry. I actually had this conversation with him a few months ago, and we had some scheduling issues, and we're going to post it today. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. It's a good one, and it's very informative. So how you doing out there? What's going on? We've got Thanksgiving, and, I could have just run a replay on this weekend because I know on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, everybody's with the family watching football. But I figured, you know what? You've got your travel to and from wherever you're going, and you might want to listen to another new episode of Guys Radio. So here we are. So let's talk a little bit about Thanksgiving. I mean, it's that holiday. You get caught up at this time of the year. Things go so quickly between, you've got Halloween and then Thanksgiving, and then you've got Christmas and Hanukkah and all of the other holidays that are around the second half of December. And there's just so many that the time of the year goes really fast. And with all of the stress that people have already between, the election that we had, that still there's a hangover on that. And then also with the pandemic, we're still dealing with that. It's been a very stressful, angst-filled year for people, so I think this will be a very special Thanksgiving. Apparently, the travel numbers are way up. People are getting out there to visit, and hopefully you have had safe travel, and you'll get back from wherever you are after a good family visit at the end of the weekend. So God bless everybody, and I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. And, for a lot of people, it's their favorite holiday because, it's got a couple of good things going for it. It's you don't have to wear a costume. You don't have to give presents. And it's all about food and football and family get-togethers. So for a lot of folks, it's their number one. You've got turkey. Most people love turkey, get stuffing. And you don't have a turkey, throughout the year that much. You can get turkey sandwiches and this and that, but not that many people buy a whole turkey or a fresh killed turkey and roast that. And then you get the stuffing, the homemade stuffing, and that takes a lot of work. And depending on what type of family you have in your background and what you eat, you have all different types of stuff that goes with it. I know from my family back in New Jersey, it was the most wonderful holiday because being Italian American was all about the food. So we would start out with some type of Italian dish up front. So it would either be raviolis, and then it evolved to a chicken soup with ravioliettes floating in there because people were saying, oh, there's too much food. I think my mama was saying that, but it wasn't too much food. But everybody loved the raviolis. And then we would have the turkey and all the trimmings with that and a whole bunch of different pies and stuff like that for dessert. And we'd watch the Lions early game, the Detroit Lions, and then the Dallas Cowboys and the later game. And now they have 3 games for football. So they just keep you locked in there the entire day. And in the meantime, you can argue about Trump and Biden and COVID and everything else during your meals. So it should be an interesting holiday this year. So I would actually advise people not to get into it. Like, leave the politics behind, leave the whole discussion of the pandemic and the mandates and all that stuff behind, and just enjoy the time you have with your family. Because I can tell you from personal experience, it goes quick. I think about back on all of those Thanksgivings I had with my family. I had my Italian grandmother, my German grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, and most of them are gone, have been replaced by a younger generation, but most of the older folks are gone. The only person that's still around from our holiday Thanksgiving meals is my mom, and she's struggling right now. So life goes quickly. So it's important to really embrace your family as best you can, because everybody has different family relationships, but it goes quickly, folks. And you want to, if you have grandparents, you want to really spend time with them because they have a lot of knowledge. They've lived in a different time than we have, and they can impart a lot of wisdom. A lot of times people just ignore their grandparents. They don't think they have anything to say, but they have a lot that they can share. So make sure you give them your love and spend some time with them, and also your parents too, because and everybody has different relationship with their parents. It can be strained, whatever, but time goes quickly. And Thanksgiving is a great time of year just to get together because, in a lot of instances, it's the first kind of holiday for about 6 months where people actually get together again after. I'm thinking back like July 4th, I guess, is a lot of family get togethers and celebrations and stuff like that. But between then and Thanksgiving, depending where people and families are spread out across the country, a lot of times they don't see each other. And many times just once a year at Thanksgiving or during the end of December holidays, Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and everything else that happens then. But Thanksgiving is the first one, so it's a good time, and you have to deal with the anxiety of and the pressure with the presents and all that. So you get together, you exchange love, and you eat food together, and maybe you watch some football, or maybe you watch some other stuff, or maybe you just sit around and talk, or maybe you play some music, or maybe you toss the ball around the backyard, whatever. But enjoy your family as best you can. And I know everybody has stress with family relationships, but do the very best you can to have a good one. I'm trying to think of some Thanksgiving stories. The one that sticks out for me is I felt so bad because my mom used to work so hard on trying to please everybody on Thanksgiving. And one year we were waiting for the turkey to be finished, to be cooked. And for some reason, it just wasn't happening. And what happened was we discovered that only half the oven was working. So, I mean, what we probably should have done in retrospect is flip the turkey to the other side of the oven, but we didn't. We just waited and waited and waited, and it just never got done. And we ended up not having a turkey for Thanksgiving. And I felt so terrible for my mom because she put so much love and time into it. But that's the way it is, and that's all the more reason why you want to really spend that time with your loved ones and just enjoy being together, because that's really what it's all about. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you're doing well. All right, so my special guest, as I mentioned, is Terry Painter. He's got some interesting stories and information to share about commercial real estate. So if we all know how crazy the real estate market is now, particularly for residential, but commercial real estate too is going through a lot of changes. So I think you're really going to like this conversation that we have. So let's get into it right now, right here on Guys Guys Radio.
It's Guys Guy Radio.
Okay, Guys Guys Radio, interview portion of our show, and we've got a great guest today and a really interesting topic. We're going to talk about commercial real estate with one of the titans of the industry. His name is Terry Painter. He's written an incredible book called The Encyclopedia of Commercial Real Estate Advice. It's very user-friendly. It answers just about any question you could ever have about commercial real estate. Let me tell you a little bit about Terry, and then we'll bring him on. Terry is the founder of the Apartment Loan Store and the Business Loan Store. $4 billion in commercial loans have closed through Terry in the past, I don't know, about 30 years or so. He's a member of the Oregon Bankers Association, Forbes Real Estate Council. He's also a writer. He resides in Oregon and the Dominican Republic, and I'm sure he's rolling in cash with all his work on commercial real estate. And we're going to get into, a very fluid market right now and try to answer as many of the questions that you might have out there during the course of the show. So Terry Painter, welcome to Guys Guys Radio. Thanks for being here.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So let's start right at the beginning, Terry. How did you get involved with commercial real estate? Did you use your own money? And why did you choose commercial versus, consumer real estate, homes, if
Okay,
you will?
what's kind of unique about me is that although I have invested in all kinds of real estate, including commercial property, what my background comes from is actually having closed and worked on hundreds and hundreds of commercial real estate loans, including business loans, over the past actually 24 years.
Did you ever use your own money when you got started? Or did you always borrow?
Um, I actually mostly borrowed. I did put uh, Actually, my background is actually that I actually had a chain of restaurants,
Oh,
and I
okay.
took out many loans, and I just fell in love with putting deals together. That's my passion. And so it was getting expensive, always building another restaurant. So I decided that I better find something else to do. And so this has been a perfect job for me.
You know, it's interesting. I watched the movie The Founder a couple of weeks ago, and Ray Kroc, his vision for McDonald's after he kind of got through, the system and kind of figured it all out. I'd worked on KFC in my advertising career, so I understand the kind of the franchisees business model. But for Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, or arguably one of the founders of McDonald's, he realized at a certain point that really building McDonald's was a real estate play, not a food play. What are your thoughts
Mhm.
about that since you come from the QSR background?
Yeah, without question, it's really a numbers game for Ray. Creating more locations. I mean, he obviously was very successful after just a few years, and a lot of my clients I mean, they're exceptionally wealthy. Not everybody, but a lot of them have just built their wealth over the years. And you wonder, like, why do they need even more money? Why are they buying another shopping center or another apartment complex or building one? But it becomes a numbers game, in my opinion.
Your start then, commercial real estate, how long have you been doing it? And then how have you kind of navigated the changes in the market over the past 30 years?
Yeah. Well, I've been doing it for 24 years, and I started out just on the West Coast and as a actually commercial mortgage broker, and then we expanded eventually nationally to become mortgage bankers, where we sold loans on the secondary market. We did just about every type of commercial real estate, all types of commercial real estate lending. So I've been through. This is kind of like my third recession that we've been through, and each time I see, each time, there's similarities, but this last recession, the coronavirus recession caused by a pandemic, is quite different. There's a lot. I mean, it's really quite shockingly different. Mostly, the other recessions were caused by just prices getting unreasonably high and the market needing a correction more so. And like with the Great Recession, it was obviously created, just by the housing market
Right.
and subprime loans and so on. This recession being caused by a pandemic, what we have now are, instead of commercial properties and housing going down in value, it's going up, which is quite unique. There are some, of course, types of commercial properties that are not going up because they're in survival mode, like retail, office, and hospitality. So,
Which are the ones then that are increasing in value for commercial real estate?
well, without question, the number one is multifamily apartment buildings.
Okay.
Uh, and yeah, and then we also industrial properties are doing very well, especially, and we have self-storage. Self-storage is like, uh, during recessions does well, and during good times it does well.
So let's talk a little bit more about COVID. What do you see with the overall market? Let's include, homes, people buying homes as well as commercial real estate. You've got, I come from New York City, and I'd read something that said 4 out of 5 workers will continue to be doing some type of remote work ongoing. So that's 80% of the workforce. They don't expect people to be back to work in offices. And I know from talking to a lot of my friends, you've got a lot of really expensive, because as a president of an ad agency, we used to look around and find different places to have our offices as we grew or shrank. And it's a fluid market always, but right now there's so much empty space there, and it doesn't look like the empty space and let's take New York as a big city example. it doesn't look like that's going to change. What can people who are invested in commercial real estate and office buildings, what can they do? They just have to they have so much money they can afford to ride it out? Because it doesn't seem like a place like New York is going to come back real soon. It will come back eventually, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah, I think unfortunately New York is going to be severely impacted uh, by just the changes in habits. Uh, let's take a look at it after that. In the aftermath of the Great Recession, around uh, 2010, roughly, offices started coming back, and the same thing happened then, but not at the level that is happening now. But what happened, even so, I had in 2007, 2008, I had 14 employees. We were in a large office building, fairly large, and I had to cut back. We all went into home offices. Well, guess what? All of my workers today are still in home offices because we like it. You know, I'm wearing a shirt today. Normally, I'd be in a tank top or a t-shirt. So it's kind of and so I think that habits have changed, and in this case, uh, more business owners that have office space, if they're doing well, they're going to keep making their payments. But are they going to renew their lease? That's the question. They've already found out that they can operate quite efficiently with people being in home offices. In fact, employees quite often can be more productive. They have less time commuting. They have more time with their families, and overall, they're happier. So, of course, there's a lot of service businesses that do require to meet with people, and they do need offices. The same thing for product related businesses. So, but we're not seeing what we're also seeing is that people who would normally invest, if they're doing a 1031 exchange right now, they can't really sell their office. If they were planning on it, they can't really. We have clients right now, they can't sell their office buildings because they've got to wait and see what happens. We have the same thing with retail properties. It's not a good time to sell those because they're just not. I mean, commercial property, the value is really based, just like any business, it's based upon its income. And so if the income is in question, or is doing poorly, in most cases we just have rent collection problems. If that's a case, it's difficult to get financing for these properties, and uh, and it's going to be challenging to find new renters. So what I see is that a lot of these properties, retail and office, are going to be repositioned. There is a shortage right now of housing, for instance, starting with single family homes. Why is that? Because really, actually, if somebody wants to sell their home, what are they going to buy? If homes are so expensive, can they actually find something in the same price range of what they've sold for? Or is it going to be even more expensive? Prices are still going up. Same thing is true for somebody who wants to get out of retail and or does not want to invest in retail, office, or hospitality. Those people are now fleeing to apartments, which is driving the prices up. Plus, just because of COVID, there's just a lack of people on the pavement, pounding the pavement, looking for properties. People are staying home. This has really affected. This is another factor that has affected real estate sales right now.
Amazing. Terry Painter, my guest on Guys Radio. We're talking about the impact of COVID on commercial real estate. So it seems like it's a domino effect, because if you have the office towers empty, and then you have the ancillary businesses around them, the restaurants, the coffee shops, the small retailers, they're hurting now also. Are you going to have to look at retooling, repositioning the office building to make them into livable spaces? Can you turn them into condos? I know in some instances that's been done.
Yes, we, in all recessions we see that's one of the golden opportunities is repositioning. But there's just so many office properties and retail centers that are going to have too much space. And keep in mind that any commercial property that has, let's just say, over 20% vacancy is considered distressed. So then it becomes to finance these properties. So if somebody has a new business plan and can convert this property into, convert it into something that there is a need for. An example is like during the last recession, some of the office buildings and some of the apartment. Let's just take a look at hotels. Some hotels that were not making it were were repositioned into student housing. So that was an opportunity in some university towns. So it's expensive, and so it really entails that that if you're going to purchase a property and reposition it, you've got to get it for an outstanding price, because it's going to cost. It's going to be very expensive to go through the whole process. It's major construction.
I know you're an expert on commercial real estate, but I think you're an expert on money and real estate in general. So just for our listeners out there, when we have the situation where the wages aren't going up, the prices of the real estate is rising, continuing to rise. The inventory is down. Not down. There's not a lot of inventory, and the new home starts aren't moving fast enough. You do have the issue of the forbearance and foreclosures, and I've read that that'll create 10 million homes will come on the market, because usually there's foreclosure homes on the market, and now there haven't been. How do you see the retail marketplace shaping up over the remainder of 2021 and 2022?
Okay, well, of course, this is just my opinion, but
please,
first of all, let's take a look at foreclosures. Okay, so those have just actually that's because of forbearance as well. Those have been delayed. However, we're not talking about middle class and upper middle class homes for the most part. People that have been affected by this pandemic have primarily been people working in the service industry, blue collar workers, and so on, that have literally had their jobs eliminated and their unemployment is running out. So a lot of those people do own homes, and they're exhausting the relief that's out there for them. So what that is going to do is obviously open up some opportunity to buy once these do go through foreclosure, is to buy them as properties. However, what we're faced with is that prices are still high, and it doesn't really work to buy, let's say, a home for over $200,000 in America and then expect to rent it out at a wage. At a rent that's anywhere near affordable for somebody making under $60,000 a year. So we have kind of like there's something unique going on there, is what I'm trying to say. So we have is that these prices that are going up really work for single family homes, or even duplexes and fourplexes can work certainly for somebody who's going to buy a home and live in it. But for somebody who wants to buy investment property, that price has to come down so that they can afford to pay that price and get a return on their investment. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Just one last part of that for the individual buyers for their own personal home. Do you, to me, it's like there's not enough inventory. The prices continue to go up, and the wages aren't going up, and a lot of people are out of work, and the stimulus is a stimulus. $1,400 isn't going to get you that far. Maybe if you have a couple kids, you get a little bit, but it's just peanuts. What's going to happen with the price of homes? Can it continue just to go straight up? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just that there's 4 phases to the real estate market cycle. Generally, the state that we're in happens in what we call the hyper supply phase. This is because it's been such a seller's market for so long. There's a need for more construction starts, more rehab starts, so more properties are improved, more properties are built. Then there's too many units on the market, and then prices still are unrealistically high, and then the bubble bursts, and then prices come down. So right now, what's happened is that prices are unrealistically high. And what happens is that, so if somebody wants to buy commercial real estate or even an investment property, as I mentioned earlier, you can't really buy a home, pay $200,000, $250,000, $400,000 for a home and expect to just rent it out to the major people who are looking to rent homes. And the same thing is true for investors of commercial real estate. If let's just say, like right now, where you live in San Diego, Robert, we're looking at commercial properties that are at closer to a 4 cap, which means that you're getting, if you want to look at it like you're investing in the stock market, you're getting a return of 4% interest on the money you've invested, and so or the value of that property. And so what it really gets down to is that are people going to really want to make less than 4%, uh, on real estate investments?
Got it.
And then also we have the same problem on the commercial real estate side. You can't just raise rents right now. We're in a pandemic. Even quality A and B luxury apartment buildings, we're not seeing rents go up on those right now. Rents are being held steady, but they're not going up. So if the prices keep going up, how in commercial real estate it does? I mean, this is something that I have a discussion on with a lot of my clients that want to buy properties that are just unrealistically high. I have to tell them if they're buying in my opinion, at the top of the market. Why do you
Both
want to do it?
commercial and consumer?
Oh, absolutely.
Both. Okay.
You're buying, you happen to mention you're looking to buy a home, but you're going to be buying at the top of the market right now. There has to come a point where economics has to play a part, and we're based upon incomes, what people can afford for rent, and so on. It has to play a factor in where prices are going.
Terry Painter, you've been so generous with your time about personal real estate. Let's get into the commercial. Let's spend some time on that. So how does somebody get started if they say, okay, I dig what Terry's saying. I'd like to go purchase a commercial property. They've got to go through the checklist. In your book, you have a nice checklist about which is the high risk, what's the lower risk. Obviously, you go where the money is when you're dealing with the lower income areas, and also types of businesses that need to be retrofit. Then you have to spend more money. But if you're just a regular person and you say, I want to switch my career to get into commercial real estate, should they do it? And what are the 3 steps they should take to get started?
Okay. Well, it's interesting because I just wrote an article for Forbes magazine called Getting Started in Real Estate, Doing Real Estate Syndication, and Why Not Start at the Top? Okay. Well, we're really taught, and most of the gurus out there that teach people to invest in income property, income real estate, tell them to start small. However, somehow I ended up working for, let's say, probably over 25 people over the years. I've helped them buy commercial properties, and those people are really starting at the top. So if you think about it, if you have one rental home, and you're going to do all the maintenance and manage that yourself, that's quite a bit of work if you have a full-time job.
Sure.
Now, if you graduate and you eventually have 6 or 8 of those, you're going to be driving all over town, taking care of these properties. Think about the economy of scale. If you have, let's say, even a 12-plex where you have, all your units on one roof, well, now the property is going to produce more income, and insurance, taxes, and a bunch of stuff is going to drop on those property and to increase the profitability of that property. Plus, okay, so as far as getting started, it's really hard to start with no money and no experience. There are gurus that tell you that you can do that, but I'm going to tell you it's really hard. What I recommend in my book, and I have a really good section on raising investors, if you don't have a lot of money and experience. My purpose in writing this book, one of the main purposes was to encourage more people to get into it, because with commercial real estate, you have 5 sources of income. You have rent. You have the income from the rents. You have rental increases. You have appreciation, depreciation, and the ability to take the equity in that property and make even more money on it by investing in more real estate through refinancing the property or doing a 1031 exchange. And so this is something that I really want to I'm trying to encourage more people to do this, but you've got to have the right personality for it. The people who have done this are the type of people that are they don't necessarily have the experience, or they're not necessarily the sharpest knife in the drawer, but they don't know they can't do something. They really believe in themselves. They have a lot of confidence. So having a lot of confidence and also learning the basics of how to evaluate an income property, whether it is a single family rental or that 12 or 24 plex apartment building, if you're going to get started, you need to really be able to evaluate that investment. That's number one. Number two, you've got to bring in, if you don't have any experience, you need to bring in people who do. Take on and also if you're going to raise investors, make sure your first investor is somebody who has that experience and also has the net worth and cash to qualify for financing. And thirdly, you're going to have to be able to sell investors. You're going to need to raise money, and that's how you can actually start out at the top, so to speak, by buying a larger property. We're talking about commercial real estate, and by being able to raise investors, and to raise investors or to raise financing for that matter, you've got to have a dynamite property. So if you are the type of person who could spend the time and is excited about real estate, you can go on LoopNet, which is the largest listing of commercial real estate for sale in the country, and you could find these properties, or even find some off-listed, not non-listed properties. And it's a great property. You're going to get the attention of investors and lenders, and this is how it's done.
Now, you mentioned a 1030 exchange. What is that for our listeners?
1031 exchange.
1031.
Okay, so I have in my book, I talk about this one client of mine who, in around 2002, bought one. I think it was a sixplex in Oakland, California, and over time, what he did is he would fix them up, raise the rents, and then if there was still room for them to grow, he would hang on to them and do a cash out refinance and buy more property. But once a property reaches its potential and the market is strong like it is right now, it's a great time to buy another, we call a replacement property, and you could buy a property that has much more income, much more depreciation, and you can leverage your equity from the old property by buying a new one, and you could do it's not tax-free, but you're just putting the taxes off for a while. And you might never have to pay taxes on that gain. But what you're doing is you're buying a larger property that has more income and more depreciation.
Terry Painter is our guest on Guys Guys Radio. The name of his book is The Encyclopedia of Commercial Real Estate Advice: How to Add Value when Buying, Selling, Repositioning, Developing, Financing, and Managing. What is repositioning a property?
Okay, well, repositioning is the most fun part to me about commercial real estate, but it could be done with a rental home, for that matter. But it's actually increasing the value. It's doing value add. And what's really amazing is some of my clients are just so brilliant at this. They just see value where the seller never saw the value. Or there's a lot of people who own income producing real estate that are just burnt out, or maybe they've gone through a divorce, maybe somebody died, somebody's inherited that property. There's all these opportunities out there. But there's really three forms of repositioning. The first one is operational, and it's very inexpensive. All you need to do is find a property that has under market rents and work on increasing those rents over time, and also lowering expenses. Okay, the second type of repositioning is actually doing cosmetic work on the property, which is basically, if it's an apartment building, change, new appliances, new floor coverings, some paint, just give it some shine. That's not too expensive either. The third type is actually doing major rehab, or what we call constructional repositioning. And that could add more value, but it has the highest amount of risk because it's really hard to buy a property at the right price without knowing exactly what it's going to cost you to rehab it, and also how long it's going to take before you could start making it income producing again by bringing in rents. So if you take too long, you could lose the property. So that's what repositioning is all about. It's the most exciting part for a lot of my clients.
With the advent of Amazon, obviously was doing great to begin with. Not only do they get you everything you want from the retailer brand names that you like, now they're creating their own brand lines. Basically, they're making everything. So you can buy a hoodie or whatever from Amazon and save $10 on it or whatever. So they're everywhere. What is the individual retailer? Is it over for the small retailer? Even if you're part of a big chain and you just have an individual store, those stores going to go away. What's going to happen with all that retail space there?
Well, that's really the bottom line question for today. Retail was in trouble before the Great Recession. Before this pandemic happened, and because of the trend towards buying online, and what we see is that, and in fact, I even tell my employees that we've got to be we do have to be really sharp at what we're doing, and also always be like, we have an online right now. Most of our income from my business comes from online sales. We have apartment loan stores is an online, buy a commercial loan online, and fortunately we made that switch, but because every business can become obsolete at some time. Who would have thought that there would be no more video stores, no more 1-hour photos, and so on? And I mean, it's just like Walmart put out so many small, businesses, hardware stores, pharmacies, some of these people, these hardware stores were my clients, and so on. And so this is another time for change. And, really nobody knows the answer to that question, but it's quite obvious that we are going to have there's just no, the rents in these like large indoor shopping malls are very expensive. So, what do you do when you have 400 Barnes and Nobles go out, at one time? What do you do when you have, something like the Gap that suddenly lays off 60,000 employees from these stores that are, in shopping malls? Of course, they all own there's a bunch of stores under the name of that corporation, but so now we have owners of these shopping malls that have to pay their mortgage payments. How do they do that when a third of the tenants are not going to be there or are not currently paying rent? And so what's going to happen is that unfortunately, when we have what I would call severe economic downturns, there's always winners and losers. Unfortunately, this brings up an opportunity for somebody to come in and, buy a shopping center, buy a strip mall, and just actually do something, keep a lot of the space for what it was previously used for, but also bring in some medical office, bring in some more dental practices, do some really creative repositioning of the tenants to create, that's what I see is going to happen. But prices are going to have to come down on these properties. And as I said, there's going to be winners and losers, unfortunately.
Interesting point you made, and you make it in the book also, is that some of the businesses that will thrive will be medical, dental, because the aging population. And so there's always going to be a need for that. In the book, you also mentioned something I think that's near and dear to a lot of commercial real estate owners, and that is property managers and how not to get ripped off by property managers.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's one of the most astounding chapters, I think, in my book is on management. And I do talk about 11 methods that it's more the mom and pop property management companies. And please understand that a lot of them, the majority, are honest, hardworking people. But the opportunity is there. And I identify 11 different methods that property managers can and often do rip off the property owners. And it's just
give us three examples of how they do
well, the number one, and you have to understand that these have all come from my clients. Mm-hmm. Like there's an example in my book of one of my doctor clients who owns an apartment building, and his property manager, because he was out of state, he lives in San Diego. The property was in Oklahoma. His property manager she did several things of the things I mentioned in my book. One is that she started collecting rents in cash and also having money orders made out to herself, claiming she was the owner of the property. So she was siphoning off cash in that case. She was then reporting those units as vacant. Okay, probably embezzlement is the number one. And I go through in my book 9 different methods that property managers can embezzle from you, and it's anything from cooking the books to actually creating a company that doesn't really exist, that they own, and build that company for work that's done. That money goes into the property manager's pocket. One very simple one that is not even thought of is that the property manager, if they're buying cleaning supplies and maintenance supplies for your property, they can also if they're doing that at Costco, they could buy stuff for themselves, at the same time. So these are, so you've got to really, in order to eliminate these, you've got to really be very diligent, and you've got to stay on top and manage your property manager. And
And
if
it
they know you're
sounds
watching all these things, they're not going to be able to get away with it.
okay. Valuing a property in 15 minutes. That's one of the points that you're an expert on. How can the novice get out there and take a look at a property and say, how do I evaluate this?
Okay, well, here's the thing: for the most part, it's easier to do this with an apartment complex than anything else. So, what one of the easiest ways it's really important when you're buying a commercial property, or for that matter, any income property, to actually not just go by what you know comparables are selling for, or the real estate professionals are telling you this property is worth, or what it's priced at, but you really have to take a look at, you have to really take a look at, does the income of the property really support this price? Are you going to buy this property because it has future potential, and wait several years before it actually gives you the cash on cash return that you need for your investment money? So actually determining the value is important. And I just did a YouTube video on this as well. And it actually is possible to actually value a property yourself in 15 minutes. But what takes a little bit longer than that is you're going to define 3 comparables. You could just go on LoopNet or ask a real estate professional for these 3 comparables. But what you're going to do, number one, is you're going to just take, if it's an apartment complex, is just take a look at what is the cost of the property per door, the average cost per door. For your property, you're going to average the cost per door in with the 3 other properties that you're comparing it to, and come up with a value for the property based on that. And so there's method. The methods are rather simple. Another method, the gross rent multiplier method, is something I don't really have time to go into on this show, but that is defined in my book. And if you just compare the gross rent multiplier on your property, which is really taking a look at what the rents are compared to the sales price of the property. And then the last one is just actually averaging the cap rates of properties that have sold and properties and the property that you want to buy. The cap rate is actually determined by just taking the net income of the property and dividing it into the purchase price. It's taking a look at the purchase price of the property, and if you were to pay cash for it, what would that earn you as a percentage? And that's the cap rate. So actually being able to value a property and learning how to do this rather quickly, so you could evaluate a lot of properties, is very important when you're buying any kind of income property.
Okay, my special guest on Guys Radio, Terry Painter. He's the GOAT here. Encyclopedia of Commercial Real Estate Advice: How to Add Value When Buying, Selling, Repositioning, Developing, and Financing, and Managing Your Properties. Last question, Terry, then I'll let you go. What are the 3 things, and real quick, that people need to ask themselves before embarking on a journey into commercial real estate?
Okay, well, I'd say number one. The number one is, do you have a love of making money this way? Because it's going to be a hard job to do, I assure you, if you're just doing this for the money. In other words, if you're already in business for yourself, then you're already a candidate, because it means you're an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs make the best investors of commercial real estate. And I love working with them because I love working with entrepreneurs. Okay. Second of all, are you willing to not take shortcuts and do your due diligence? Are you willing to, if you have too much on your plate already, you're raising kids, your spouse is complaining that you're working too hard and you're now going to buy an investment property? Well, if you just take a look at what's in the marketing flyer that the real estate broker is putting out, and you just believe that, you're going to probably be paying too much for a property. So are you going to be willing to do the work? Okay. And thirdly, are you willing to get help? In other words, admit that you don't know something. If you're just getting started, there are people out there that can tell you. In fact, there's so much free advice out there. You could go on Google, you could go on YouTube. There's all these tutorials on how to buy commercial real estate. And there's some great books, mine being just one of them out there that can help you. So that's what I advise. Yeah.
Fantastic. You're the best, Terry. Thank you so much. The Encyclopedia of Commercial Real Estate Advice, Terry Painter, my guest on Guys Radio. Where can everybody find out more about you and your book?
Okay, well, you could actually get a sample of the book on Amazon or purchase it if you'd like. Uh, and otherwise, you could go to apartmentloanstore.com if you're interested in uh, commercial real estate financing. And there's lots of articles written on that website that could also teach you a lot about commercial real estate as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Terry, for being on Guys Guys Radio. Terry Painter, you're a Guys Guy.
Okay, it's a pleasure.
It's Guys Guy Radio.
Okay, what an informative conversation with Terry Painter. I mean, he is truly an expert in commercial real estate. He founded the Apartment Loan Store and the Business Loan Store. These are mortgage banking firms that have closed over $4 billion in commercial loans nationally. He really knows his stuff. So we talked about some techniques to recession-proof your investments, how to get started in commercial real estate, how to work with property managers, a lot of money-saving tips, and how to get the best deals on loans. And we also talked a lot about residential real estate because, as we know, the commercial real estate market's a little tricky right now. There's always opportunities, but the commercial real estate, you have to be pretty savvy right now to make money on it, and you have to be liquid, and you have to be willing to work with the timing to get your return on investment because, there's a lot of commercial real estate available. And you see what's happening with the malls and stuff. There's less foot traffic, and a lot of people are buying more and more stuff online, and people are living remotely more and more, whether it's work or just how they live. People are getting stuff delivered. They don't go out as much. You're dealing with COVID. You're dealing with a lot of anxiety out there. And the way we live has changed. So real estate is part of that. So when you're dealing with residential real estate, the prices, as we know, have gone crazy to buy and as well as to rent here in Southern California, as well as many other areas. People are getting priced out from buying, and renting is tough. It's just a squeeze on everybody because the rents have gone up also. But the good news is the interest rates are still pretty low for mortgages. So if you can find something that fits your needs and what you're looking for, maybe it's still a good time to jump in. The people I've talked to in the real estate industry, besides Terry, they say, you know what, particularly here in Southern California, they say it really never goes down. There might be a blip, but then it's going to keep churning back up again. And the way people live here seems to be pretty transient in the way that they'll buy something and maybe then they'll rent it out, and they'll buy something else and rent that out, and then they just keep moving, and it's a whole part of your lifestyle is how you negotiate and work with real estate. So it's fascinating. It's a little bit different than back east. Back east, when I lived in New York City, the game was if you weren't a billionaire, which you have to be to have a really fun lifestyle in New York now, you would probably consider moving to areas that hadn't been kind of redeveloped yet, and buy into a new building or rent in a new building and then hang in there for a while. And if you did buy, then sell after 5 years or so, and then move to the next neighborhood that's on the upswing. And then eventually you'll have a bunch of cash from your transactions. But it's a little bit different here, where there's a lot of buying, selling, renting, and all of that. It seems more as that's part of your lifestyle. People keep moving faster, I think, out here than they do in New York. Anyhow, that's just been my experience and from the folks I've talked to. But today, our focus again was on Terry's book about commercial real estate, the Encyclopedia of Commercial Real Estate Advice. If you are thinking about commercial real estate, I would highly recommend you check out Terry and his book because it's good stuff. So I'm glad he came on the show today. And on Guys Guys Radio, we bring you all different types of guests, all different types of information. So we have metaphysical teachers, we have wellness, diet, alternative medicine experts with a lot of different opinions on stuff. We've had New York Times best-selling authors. I've got some good sports people coming up on the show and people from Hollywood. And we're on our 489th show, I believe, is today. So we've got 11 more till we hit that magic 500th show. So I hope you'll hang in there because I've got some big plans for number 500. So, Guys Radio, we're here on KCAA Radio every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. The podcast and my YouTube post Thursdays worldwide. The YouTube is called, we call it Guys TV, but to find it, just use my name, Robert Manni. If you want to support me, the work we're doing here to bring you all these great guests with the content that helps you live your best lives, I would ask you to do just one thing. Subscribe to either the podcast or the YouTube. It makes a difference, and it helps me get great guests and helps me keep the show going for you. And that's really my intention. We've got a lot more great guests coming up, as I mentioned. The show also, the KCAA show, rebroadcasts every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific time here in Southern California. You can catch the podcast and my YouTube, as I mentioned, worldwide every Thursday. And it's pretty much, the podcast is everywhere you consume your podcast. We're on over 30 global platforms. So there's no excuse not to be able to find the show, and you can always just Google my name or Guys Radio if you want to find it, or just go to Apple. My podcast is easy to find there, and every place else, all the big ones, all the big platforms. So you can catch me also on my website, robertmanni, MANNI.com. There I've got over 300 blog posts about life, love, the pursuit of happiness. I drill into a lot of issues. I'm just finishing up one. I had mentioned it, I think, last week. It's about how to get unstuck, because I'm noticing so many guys, particularly aging guys, they get stuck and they don't change, and they just lock in and they dig in, and they'll never say they're wrong, and they just, you know how it is. You get these grumpy old men, and I see a lot of my friends, because I'm a boomer, and they're starting to get rigid in their ways of thinking, and they're great guys and everything, but they're not open enough to new ideas, in my opinion. And I think there's a difference between when some guys age, they think that the world's going to like bend to them, and they want things to be back the way they used to be. And you know what? It ain't going to happen. I think what men really need to do is, as they age, is to become more adaptable to an ever-changing world, because that's really what's going to happen. The world's not going to change for you. The world's going to change, and it's up to you to decide if you want to go along with it and work within the changes, or if you want to just dig in your heels and say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's up to you, guys, boomer guys out there. It's up to you. I would recommend that you consider being a little more adaptable. And sometimes it's not easy, but ultimately it helps. So anyhow, we've got over 300 blog posts on my website. We can also download 3 free chapters of my novel, The Guy's Guide to Love, which is the source material for all things Guy. It's about 2 men in advertising competing for love, sex, power, and money in New York City. And it's really about men. It's a peek behind a curtain, if you will, to the lives of men and single men. And it shows their flaws and their weird, wacky ways. But you know what? It ain't so bad. There's toxic guys, but there's good guys also. And there's guys. And I think you'll get a flavor for all of them. And people seem to really enjoy the book. Men and women really seem to have some fun with it, because it is a romantic comedy, and guys usually don't read rom-coms, but in this case they do, because it's from the male perspective, and it's not misogynist. It's fun, and it's real, and it's authentic, and you've got some savvy women characters, and you've got some flawed male characters, but somehow it all works together, and it's a rompy type of plot, and it's a fast and frothy read, and everybody seems to have fun with it. So you can check that out on my website, download 3 free chapters, and then you can pick it up on Amazon or wherever you buy your books. And also, if you really want to support the show, again, please subscribe to the YouTube or subscribe to the podcast. It makes a huge difference. Anyhow, we've got a lot of great shows coming up, got a lot of great things coming on between now and the end of the year. I want to thank my producer, Chris, for the wonderful work she does. I also want to thank all my great guests. There's so many cool people I've had a chance to interview and learn from. And I also want to thank, most importantly, my listeners and viewers, you folks out there who make it all possible. So thank you. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, a safe one, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you next week. And until then, as I always like to say, guys, finish first. If you enjoyed the interview and want to support all the helpful content we bring you each week here on Guys TV, then please subscribe now, and also on my podcast, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support.